if anyone is taking away from this that I like have anything figured out or like I absolutely do not. I am, adrift here also.
Welcome to Did I Do That? It's a podcast about making graphic design and making mistakes because, hey, it's all part of the process. I'm Sean Schumacher, and joining me today, a very special guest. He's a legend of online design discourse, having kicked off both the Web Design Focus Build Festival and The Manual, a journal for designers who work on the internet, before starting XOXO, the experimental festival for online creators, in 2012. These days, he produces events for the likes of Adobe, Duolingo, Slack, Intel, and more through his studio Regular. And after opening the experimental zero-proof cocktail bar Suckerpunch, he's gone on to found the non-alcoholic craft brewery Heck. It's Andy McMillan. Hi, Andy.
Oh my gosh, that was a lot of stuff.
It is a lot of stuff.
Let's go back and add caveats to all of that. Yeah, Build was a long time ago.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I haven't published books in a long time either. Yeah,
Give me some other asterisks here.
Yeah, the bar's closed. Yeah.
These things happen. Time comes for us all. So you're a bit of a web head.
A web head.
A web head. This is a term that I'm trademarking. Web head.
Uh-huh.
It's an amazing, wonderful term that everyone loves. And I assume also you enjoy the Macintosh family of products. You were the first person ever who has shared location on iPhone with me.
I mean, that's what it's there for.
I guess so. I forgot that I had the Find My app installed on my phone.
It just pops up in your messages, right? That's what they do the
really
demos.
Good, though. It worked good.
Yeah.
So we are a few weeks out from the keynote in which our world was changed, nay, rocked by the idea of strapping a $4,000 box to your head. So you could pretend you're looking at a laptop right in front of you while you're on an airplane. Really, just a game-changing idea.
We're talking about this?
We're talking about this.
I don't have opinions about this.
Well, that's fine. So, that's definitely been the focus of Apple's attention, I would say, for sure. But Apple is also generous with us, the plebes, who still use macOS day to day. Us nerds, us old school folks who are using it for work and stuff like that. So they've announced a new version of macOS at that same keynote. Have you heard about this? Have you heard about the new macOS Sonoma?
Wait, we just did a little warm-up conversation here for 30 minutes. And then you hit the record button, and now I'm on a tech podcast talking about the Apple keynote? What are we doing?
This is literally the most tech-focused this show has ever been.
What? Wait, what was the question?
macOS Sonoma. I guess I'll jump right into it. Why I'm asking is, can you name? I've been on their website. Can you name the number one top of the list feature on the macOS Sonoma website? And I will say, first off, this is a game that I've been playing with students for the past couple weeks. It delights me to no end, the reactions when you actually see what the top tier feature is.
Okay, so the question is...
You will not win.
There's a new macOS coming out.
It's called Sonoma.
Sonoma, in the fall, right? They released their OS in the fall.
Yes.
And on the website, what feature are they pitching as being the most exciting feature of macOS?
The feature that is just blowing our minds about this new version of macOS, truly equal to the Apple headset. Box, whatever.
I use my computer for email, and the Notes app is one of those. That's all I care about.
No, those would be much more exciting than the actual top tier feature.
All right. Talk it to me. What is it?
Welcome.
To screens. Oh, hey, now, okay. Okay, so what has just happened
You're going to defend screensavers, the top tier feature.
I am absolutely going to defend screensavers. Now, this is your fault.
I absolutely.
You're
making
me talk about this. So I have just been presented with an iPad that has the macOS Sonoma preview page open on it, and right at the top, no kidding, is the Apple TV screensavers are coming to the Mac.
Yeah.
Hey, that's the best part of the Apple TV. You don't.
It is.
No kidding.
You're not wrong.
Especially, God, at the beginning of the pandemic, you didn't put the screensavers on to look at national parks and stuff. That's my absolute, and they release new ones every month. And that's a big day, when the new Apple screensavers come out. You have brought this up with the wrong person. And I apologize now for my skepticism moments ago. The screensavers, the Apple TV screensavers coming to the Mac, I'm genuinely stoked for that. That's great.
Truly screensavers. I did not expect this reaction because I've never gotten it in all the times, but I love it. And I will also say I love these screensavers. I think they're great.
They are.
And you know, I have currently an extension on my computer that actually loads in it. I don't know what it does. I probably impersonates the Apple TV user agent and just downloads the screensavers. And so if I go into screensaver
so why did you bring this up to dunk on it then? If you've gone out of your way to put them on your computer, isn't Apple doing you a favor here?
I would love it if Apple made it seem like they were trying a little bit more, I guess.
Well,
screensavers does feel like it's a good feature. Is it the number one feature, though, that you want in a new macOS release?
Well, what's the number one feature that you want? What does your computer not do at the moment you think that they should be focusing on?
I would love it to work good. If they could make an operating system that made the computer faster and crash less, that would actually be good for me. They don't seem to want to do that, though. And they haven't for, I would say, about 12 versions.
I would perhaps then consider orienting your career around less processor-intensive software.
Yeah.
Which is what
not running them all at the same time, you mean?
don't have, you mentioned I did some consulting for Adobe a couple of years ago. I'm not going to say anything about Adobe. Maybe I will, but you know, I don't.
You're not listening to this.
I don't think so. You know, I don't have any Creative Cloud apps on my laptop. No, I was not kidding. I have the email app open and the Notes app open, and that's about it. And my computer is great. I don't have any problems with it whatsoever. As long as you don't ask it to do anything, you're gonna have a much better time.
I mean, I think that is the aspirational vision for what the modern computer could be. Is, you know, it's really just a notepad that comes to life.
Basically,
yeah.
I don't really want it to do anything else.
It's a notepad that comes to life. Dances around, sings for you.
I mean, at a certain point, you know, this happens every year too. Since now I'm on a tech podcast. But this happens every year, you know, when they release the new phone or the new iOS comes out or whatever. And I'm like, but it doesn't do anything, you know, revolutionary. I'm like, what do you want it to do?
This is very fair.
It already does a lot of stuff.
It does do a lot.
It's already kind of a magic rectangle. What else would you want them to have it do? And like, I think screensavers, they're kind of out of ideas. Like, do we have any better
definitely
ideas?
Out of ideas.
Like, I don't know. My computer and my phone almost do too much. And again, I'll emphasize, I only use them for email and notes. It's already bothering me too much with email and notes as it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, maybe that is part of a good, because I think still we are now in July of 2023, and I'm still trying to figure out what the theme is of 2023. Maybe part of it is still the do less mentality of like find ways to reduce, to reuse, to recycle. And Apple is already getting on that train with Sonoma, you know?
Sure.
We're recycling the Apple TV screensavers, and
well, they do this as well, right? Every so often,
yeah.
and you know, people complain about it. Every so often, they take a year where they just do some tidy up work. You know, the latest. I said this the other day that I'm such a fan of pain and suffering. I'm like, God, I actually am very well prepped to have this conversation. Unfortunately, I put the iOS 17 beta on my phone a couple days ago.
Oh no! Why would you do that?
Because I like pain and suffering.
Yeah.
And
I've been very tempted by the Watch one. It seems like they really actually fixed some.
Then maybe they have. It's the tidy up year. It's they're going, but they're not doing anything big. I think in large part because there aren't really that many big things left to do.
Yeah.
And we're getting a nice tidy up year. And maybe we can sort of springboard that into a broader conversation about like maybe this is everyone's kind of spring cleaning year. You know, are we just going to go back and tidy everything up, get some visual consistency in the OS or whatever? Like, I don't know. Yeah, tortured analogy time. I don't know.
Welcome to my new podcast, Tortured Analogy Time. I'm Sean Schumacher.
That's my podcast.
Yeah. Oh, damn! You already trademarked it. Damn. So Andy, we were talking a little bit before the recording about kind of how you came into this big field that we call design. And that you do not come from a graphic design background. You came from specifically an audio background originally, right?
I don't know. I'm your fun, weird guest, where
Please,
look at the list. I'm like, look at all these incredibly accomplished people who are very easy to understand.
Yeah, but they're talking to me.
This weirdo. I'm your nice sort of oddball for the season. And it also feels very odd. I'm going to. It's towards an analogy. Maybe not towards an analogy. I tell you something.
I'm licensing it just for this one segment.
On July 3rd, we're recording this on July 9th, so it was only a few days ago, I became an American citizen.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, hey.
Congratulations.
Everyone's very excited and pumped for America and what America's up to and where they're headed.
I would say it's the best time, but...
What a time.
It just keeps getting better is the thing.
But I don't want to abandon. I'm originally from Belfast in Northern Ireland, and you are. I'm doing the best job that I can hiding my accent, but now that I've said that, you're going to hear me say a few words a little strange. That's why. It's because I'm not actually from here. And this is, I really enjoy, I get to be kind of a little bit British, and I get to be a little bit Irish, and now I get to be a little bit American. I kind of get to pick whatever position lets me be the most insufferable. And so...
truly, that's the most Portland way to be.
So I'm taking a long walk to making this point, which is I was going to be our theme this episode, that this is a very American thing, right? Like Americans like to talk about college and like where they were when they were younger and stuff. And I'm like, I always find it very strange, especially when being interviewed like this, like, oh, where'd you like come from? And, what's your career? I'm like, I never think about that stuff. Like, I don't even really remember what I was doing 2 years ago. I'm like, what was I doing? I'm 36. What was I doing when I was in my teens and 20s? Like, I don't know. It's almost completely irrelevant. And so, I did a lot of weird stuff. I went to school originally for audio engineering, but I dropped out after the second year because I didn't have a good time. It was not a very well put together course.
Oh.
And I dropped out, but I was part of the college, or it's not called college in the UK, it's called university, the university radio station. And so, I have some experience there. I'm familiar being in a studio and having a microphone in front of my face. And around the same time, I was also, like, when people ask, like, how I got into events, like, I was booking clubs, like, bands. I'm like, I don't even remember how I got into that. I think a friend of mine just ended up he was running a club, and he went and got another job, and he asked me if I wanted to take it over.
Just something very unofficial, like, hey, you want to do this?
Yeah, you seem competent, and, like, do you want to do this? And so I did that for a couple of years and booked shows in Belfast for a while. And then I started organizing meetups because I was getting interested in sort of a field that I don't believe exists anymore called web design.
Yeah,
because now everybody
web design.
We're product designers or whatever. I'm not. I don't do a lot.
Product
of web
design might be the worst of those terms because it could be a billion different things.
Yeah, pick a different word. It's like engineers. Like you meet someone and they're like, "Hey, I'm an engineer," and I'm like, "Wait, do you build bridges or do you write code all day?" Like those are two very different things. And like product designer, like, are you designing furniture, or are you making websites? Like, couldn't we have come up with a different proper noun for that?
It's also attached to what I think is one of the most cursed things about our modern web design world, which is the idea that you're organized into these little teams building little features that no one cares about or wants or needs.
And if you work for a company, they also never ship.
No.
Like you work on something for like 6 months and then it gets,
Or they ship it and everyone hates it.
Right, yeah. Or
truly just a perfect Ouroboros of hatred.
And we're very much in the era of shipping unnecessary changes to things like, there's a lot of things that seem like, I don't know, Slack just made a bunch of changes. I sit in Slack all day, as we all do, and Slack are changing things at the moment. And it really feels like they're just doing it to give people who work there something to do.
Yeah.
Rather than it being sensible changes that make sense.
This is the thing. This is the thing that drives me nuts.
Right. So yes, anyway, like, I went to school for audio engineering, and I like to joke that left me with two skills that I can put a PA together. Like I know how to plug everything in, like, if we're doing live music at the festival or whatever, like I know how a soundboard works, And it also means I can't buy headphones that cost less than $400 anymore. Like that's all I took away from 2 years doing that. And yeah, I was building websites mostly for myself. And then I started doing it for clients when I dropped out of university. And
this is also, I mean, to go back to what we were talking about, web design being a field that no longer exists. Like in those days, like you could actually build the whole thing yourself and not on Squarespace. You would get into
there was
a
no
code
logic
editor.
to it or anything. Like I stopped designing websites before the CSS pre-processing stuff started happening, or before responsive web design or whatever. Like now, front end development, as I understand it, is a lot more sort of engineering focused. But when I was doing it, you had index.html and style.css. And after a while, then we started putting that in the CSS folder. That was nice. You weren't putting your CSS actually in your HTML. And then I stopped before it got any more interesting than that. And I could do it all entirely by myself. That's obviously not the case anymore. I know, to the point that we were making about Slack, it feels like it became unnecessarily complicated.
Yeah,
because it needed to be. Some people needed something to do. Like
some people built apps on the web, and that seemed like a good idea until it wasn't. And now we all have to build apps on the web, and that's just become a curse.
Yeah. So I got out of that before it got weird and annoying, and before you had to be really good at it, and it took like actual skill, and you had to, maybe have more of an engineering kind of mindset. And like, how did I get started doing events? I don't know. My friend Joe asked me to book shows at this club, and then I started doing meetups, and then I started doing bar camp, which I haven't heard anyone talk about bar camp in a while. Like,
what's bar camp?
There was a God, I should not feel this old at 36. This is wild. Like on conferences, did you ever go to anything? The idea was that instead of going to a conference someone was booking it and programming it, and there was a schedule. The idea was that you would basically just throw a grid up on a wall with a bunch of Post-it notes, and people would show up and volunteer to give talks, and it was all volunteer kind of.
Damn, that sounds great, actually.
Yeah, and so the original one was, I think this is right. Anyway, the original one was bar camp, and then of course it forked, and people did all different. Like people would do on conferences that focus on different themes, but bar camp originally was just sort of a broad, like come and talk about whatever.
Yeah,
and of course it was all internet people, so it did have a sort of unintended or an unintentional focus. But I did bar camp in Belfast for 2 or 3 years. And then I started doing builds, which was a more legit, like you had to, I was booking speakers and you had to buy tickets. And I did that for 5 years. And then right towards the end of that, as I was wrapping it up, I met my business partner, who's also called Andy. And Andy and I started doing EXO together. And I guess there's a through line here, right? Like, but it feels I think this is a very American kind of proclivity to like have to go back and sort of weave this through line throughout your life, or like
it was always meant to be bringing me here to this moment.
College, or that age that you're at when you're in college, being like very continuing to be relevant as you're an adult. I'm like, no, I've never felt that way. Like I get up and I do what I got to do today, and the things that I've done in the last few months are probably relevant to that. But I don't remember university. I don't remember really the radio station that well. Like I've forgotten a lot of that stuff.
As would be the case. I mean, like I think people do sometimes like pretend that they remember more of it. But like I think back to even my university days, and like I remembered less and less and less of it by the day. Like the only thing that really stands out are like the really negative critiques. But
of course, yeah, you only really remember the bad stuff.
Yeah. But I don't know that I could tell you much else about like what I did there at this point.
Folks listening to this will be familiar with podcasts, presumably, and so
if you're not,
hey, welcome. You're listening to one, and so maybe some of you
can put it on your iPod.
Yes, I hope the battery's still good.
Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe some folks might be familiar with the McElroy brothers, who have a comedy podcast, but also do a D&D podcast with their dad.
Oh, yes.
So I have a tattoo on my arm of what most people think is a jellyfish.
You got a voidfish.
Yes.
Yes.
Excellent. I have a voidfish because
I'm exactly the same kind of nerd as this. So
yes.
This is good. This is actually very good.
And so if you're not familiar in the story, in the first arc of the Adventure Zone, the D&D podcast they do with their dad, there is a character, which is really more of a plot device, called the void fish,
Yeah.
which they feed memories to, and it causes everyone in the world to forget the memory. And so like they feed it a song and everyone in the world forgets the song or whatever. And like
Yes.
it turns out
someone's job is to write songs that are immediately forgotten
and feed them to the void fish.
Yes.
And so I'm like because I think about this a lot, like the power of forgetting, and like I was like that is why I have a jellyfish on my arm that helps people forget stuff, is that I think this like I don't know that I care to remember. Like I think I've fed a lot of stuff to the void fish. And so that's why I have this void fish on my arm. Like I don't remember stuff from the distant past, and I'm kind of happy to, I think.
That seems like a healthier way to be, honestly.
Maybe.
Uh-huh.
Or it's informed by deep trauma and is actually a really unhealthy thing to do.
Wow.
And it's
everything's a little column A, little column B, ultimately.
I don't know if anyone is a McElroy fan. Maybe you've seen. I watched this video it was maybe a couple of years ago now, where Griffin, was one of the brothers, gave a talk. It was like a opening or graduation speech.
Yeah, like a commencement ceremony.
Speech or something.
Yeah.
And it was specifically talked about the complete opposite of this, about you don't forget who you are. Don't forget who you are when you're young and embarrassing and you dress like an idiot and like you've got weird hair. Like you should go back and look at your photos. I think the point that he's making is like in 10 or 20 years, when you think about this time, like you're going to feel the urge to be embarrassed by this and to forget it and kind of move on.
Yeah.
And don't. Like it is part of who you are. Like you were this person. You can't really forget and move on from these things. And so I was like, well, thanks, buddy. I did get a tattoo of a creature that you invented that told me the complete opposite of that. So, yeah. So maybe it's sort of an odd tattoo. Maybe I should have asked Griffin first.
Well, I think it's one of those things where like you have to have a mix of both, because like if you are trying to just pretend that your past doesn't exist at all, which I think is in some ways a thing that a lot of the younger folks that I talk to really want to believe. Like their more embarrassing moments in high school are just, gone, and from this point on, their entry into college, they will be perfect.
Yeah.
And they will be perfect for the rest of their lives, and they will never be ashamed of any step from adulthood onward. But you can't really be that way.
Right.
And in a way, that high school stuff, like it's the shame of that they are running from. Yeah. And I certainly was in the same boat. I was very ashamed of like my high school self, and I ran from it for a long time, and very ashamed of my early college self.
I mean, I moved 4,500 miles away from where my life was when I was 24. Very much, in that kind of original idea of the tattoo. And yeah, I think, honestly, it's sort of odd, but I watched that video and I did find that actually quite affecting. Like,
yeah.
Oh, wait, the person who conceived this character, or this plot contrivance or whatever, is actually telling me the opposite. And like, I think that's maybe like,
but
I think I want to pay attention to that a little bit more than the power of forgetting.
Maybe, but like,
is this getting a little too navel-gazy already?
No, this is, if there's any show for navel-gaziness, it's this one.
Great.
But like, to also think about like, I mean, I think you do need to forget some of that, because like otherwise you are permanently stuck in trauma, which is a bad place to be, as someone who has spent a lot of their life stuck in various traumas.
Maybe not like compartmentalizing and packing it away and ignoring it, forgetting it or whatever. Of course, you got the only way out is through, or whatever people say. I've been in therapy for 7 years. I'm aware of all of this stuff. Like, yeah, I think there's a healthier balance with like not letting yourself be tied down to who you were in the past. Like, yeah, there's a healthier relationship to have with these two ideas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no right answer ultimately with any of this.
Right.
There's no, if you go too hard in any one direction, it's going to be chaos. But like, you need to forget some stuff to be able to grow and to be able to find the person that you're going to be. And like, that is a normal part of just getting to the later stages of your life. Like,
right. And I was much more extreme about that a few years back. I'm like, my accent is different. I don't sound super Northern Irish anymore. And like,
yeah,
I changed a lot of stuff. Like I really wanted to forget. I really wanted to, draw a line under that. And I think, as that has softened, again, kind of hilariously because I watched that commencement speech, like, I think I'm allowing myself to have a more nuanced take on that. But there we are.
It's all complicated. It's all so.
And a thing I think about constantly because I had it permanently etched into my arm.
Yeah, it's right on your forearm.
It's right there.
And you did it on the inner forearm too, which that must have been so painful.
Oh,
That's
not
such a tender area for me.
I have a friend who has bats on her rib cage.
Oh no!
And I remember her explaining or retelling the story of getting that. That sounds like it was the ribs. I have a tattoo on my wrist on my other arm. That was pretty gnarly because all the nerve endings for your hand bunch together in your wrist. And so it's very sensitive. Like, that's pretty bad. I also have this visual medium of podcast. This is going to be very good.
Yeah, this podcast in and of itself is an inherently flawed idea. Uh-huh. So
I do have a half sleeve on my other arm.
Damn, all right. And that's big.
There's like a full half sleeve on my farmer's tan. But right underneath, like close into my armpit, that wrecked. Like this was 16 hours. And for the couple hours that she was in my armpit, I couldn't talk. It hurt so bad. Like, it was, I was like gritting my teeth. So the fleshy part of my, chonky arm, that was fine. Yeah, I didn't even really realize that was happening. I forgot about it.
The whitefish did its job. Hooray.
Hey.
So
this is going great.
They always do. But like after all that, you ended up in Portland.
Mm-hmm.
Like was it kind of Build that took you to Portland? Was it running away? Like what was the motivation?
Oh, I'm not going to give you the real answer to that. No, but I've got the cute answer.
Please.
So I came to Portland for the first time in the summer of 2011 to visit someone who is maybe familiar to the faculty here and maybe some of the listeners, Frank Schumacher.
Yes.
Used to live in Portland, who spoke at Build, I think the second Build. He did a talk called The Shape of Design, which he then turned into a book.
Yeah.
And he very kindly, when he came out to speak at Build, we just got friendly, and he asked if I wanted to come crash with him in Portland for a while. And I was like, at the time, I was like, oh my God, Frank Schumacher wants to hang out with me? What the hell? Yeah, sure, buddy. Like, no problem. And so I ended up coming out here in the summer of 2011 for a month. And also didn't come out as a tourist. Like, I got an office at ADX like the second day that I was here when ADX was open for a month at that point. They had just opened that summer. And I kind of just cosplayed like I lived here. Like I left Frank's apartment every morning and went to the office and worked for a little bit. And
did you have a return ticket, or in theory?
I did. Of course, yes. If anyone from the Department of Homeland Security is listening up, I was absolutely intending to go home.
You were
of course I was.
You had
yes.
You had a perfect itinerary already worked out.
But and that was what I did anyway. When I traveled, like, I like to work. I had the kind of job that meant that I could just brought my laptop and I could work from wherever.
Yeah.
But I did it a little bit more legit when I got here. I was like, I'm going to go. Honestly, I took a cab from the airport and they took me down past ADX and I saw the painting. They painted ADX on the side of the building. I was like, what is this place? Like, that's so cool. And then I Googled it when I got in and found out that they had desks. I'm like, that's a great idea. I'm going to rent a desk while I'm here for the month. Instead of just sitting at a coffee shop, so I'll go walk over there every day. And so that actually ended up being really smart because very quickly I was sort of modeling like, this is sort of what it would be like to just be here.
Yeah.
And it was very pleasant. Like, I really loved being here. And Frank also, because of who he is, like, he knew a lot of people here at PSU and a lot of other designers and interesting people. And very quickly, that first trip, I met so many incredible, wonderful, sweet, creative weirdos, and very quickly just became enamored with the place and ended up kind of flying back and forth for a bit over the years while I figured out how to be able to live here. So somewhere in the mix, I met Andy and we started EXO together. He came over to Build at one point. I think it was actually after we agreed that we were going to work together.
Oh.
And so, yeah, I don't like the timeline there of like, how did I end up here? I mean, the origin story there from the very beginning was I just wanted to be buddies with Frank, honestly. And I didn't, like, before I got on that flight, I was like, I don't know anything about this place. Like, I certainly I was not looking for a different place to live or anything. Certainly, I was kind of feeling I was at an inflection point, and like, I had already announced that Build was going to end in 2 years, and I was thinking about what I wanted to do next. I knew I wanted to do 5 of them. I thought I had 5 in me. And so it was good timing.
Yeah.
Like, I came here and I found a place I really loved and a community that I really adored. And it was around the time that Sealy started Creative Mornings here too.
Yes, Sealy Pines.
Yeah, that had like in the beginning was just like a who's who. And I just went to that and I met also just so many incredible people. It was just such an incredible community here. And yeah, I got really enamored with that and eventually decided like, no, this is the place for me. Like, I feel very at home here.
I think you in a way came at the perfect time.
Yeah, it was around the time when, if anyone was here for it, there were all the New York Times had an obsession with Portland for like a year, 2 years.
Yeah, every single week.
Yeah, there would be an article about like, this place, there's so much great food, and it's temperate, as long as you don't go not in the summer.
As long as you don't go during the 10 months of a year.
Right.
It's not.
Yeah, they were really, I don't know who was paying them, but they were really selling Portland and at the time. And I don't know that I'm sure I saw some. I wasn't really paying attention to that. But I know that was at a particular time when Portland was having its moment in the sun, so to speak.
Yeah, it was almost at the cadence of the number of Portland is dead and it will be trashed forever
now,
articles that we get now.
Yeah, which is ridiculous because, yeah, this place has changed a lot in the 10, 12 years I've been here. But yeah, it's not dead.
No,
like not even close. Like, yeah, this place is still full of really wonderful, creative, interesting, specific kinds of nerds and weirdos. And yeah, that obviously, some of them have been displaced because it's getting more expensive to live here, but it's getting more expensive to live everywhere.
Yeah,
like that's
for sure.
Just Portland's problem. Yeah. Well, we could definitely take a tangent and talk about that for 45 minutes. I'm going to hold back a little.
I mean, we kind of did before the recording, ultimately. Yeah. But yeah, like, first of all, for folks who don't know, like, what was XO in its original form? Like,
so the sort of one-liner is that we say it's an experimental festival for independent artists who live and work online. And if you are one of those people,
yeah,
that description, I think, makes a lot of sense to you. And if you're not, what the fuck does that even mean? And really, it's... and this is, broadened quite a bit in the last 3 years, too, because now we're all people who live and work online.
Yes.
But there was a time not that long ago when being a creative person who was, you had some kind of creative practice that you were trying to sustain independently through cultivating an audience, through a lot of people have Patreon projects or, they're even just like a Twitter following or a mailing list. You're trying to... There's a very famous essay about this, Kevin Kelly's essay, The 1,000 True Fans, that if you can collect enough people to give you a little bit on a regular basis, a little bit of money on a regular basis, that can be a job. Like, you only need 1,000 people to give you a couple bucks a month for you to be able to pay your rent. And so other Andy Baio, who I started XO with, one of his many claims to fame was that he was involved at Kickstarter pretty early on. And so another shorthand when people don't really understand what XO is, as I say, is kind of started as the Kickstarter festival. Like, when Kickstarter was exploding in the beginning and a lot of people were using it to like launch interesting creative projects without having to go through publishers or labels or other middlemen to get something done. Like, we were very much sort of capturing the energy and enthusiasm around that. And we have sustained that. That is still core to what the festival has been up until the last one that we did in 2019. It's still very much centering independent artists, people who are, interesting internet people who, they have some kind of creative practice, again, independently. The rule at the festival has always been, we don't put anyone on the lineup, or we don't put work on the lineup without the creator. Yeah. Like, if you are playing a video game at Arcade, the person who made it is standing right next to you. In fact, you're maybe even playing it with them. Or at Tabletop, like, you're playing the game with the person who made it. Like, we don't show work without the creator there. So very specific kind of thing. It's, it's obviously found a kind of cult following. People really love it. I got to share this anecdote again with someone the other day that, it's very hyped. The people who love it really love it. Maybe even a little too much. And this became not a problem, but like, that's a lot of pressure to be under every year.
Yeah.
Like that people get very hyped for it. And
well, it's a festival about making creative work online, and that is also a facet of making creative work online. Is sometimes things can get a little overheated.
Unbridled enthusiasm. And so, we sort of embraced this back in like 2014, 2015. And the festival has an unofficial tagline, which is lower your expectations, which we've put in lit signage by registration every year since, like, when people show up, we're like, okay, I know you're excited to be here, but we're just two guys trying to pull this weird thing off. Like, you got to tamp it down a little bit and like, lower your expectations. So we started that in 2012. It was originally, quite aptly, I suppose, a Kickstarter project. And sold out in 50 hours, a number I will never forget because it's not 48. I've never been able to say it sold out in 2 days. It took 2 hours more than 2 days.
2-ish days.
Incredibly annoying. And it's been, it found an audience very quickly. And so we did 5 in a row from 2012 through to 2016. We said in 2016 that we were going to take a little bit of time off. It's in September. And so 2 months after the last one in 2016 was the 2016 election. And very quickly, the community was like, actually, please don't take this away from us. Like, community is really important right now.
Yeah.
Like, we can't be without this for multiple years at a time. So we ended up taking a hiatus just for a single year, and we brought it back in 2018. And we did what we refer to as the big one at Veterans Memorial Coliseum. You brought up earlier something about complaining about things that I didn't enjoy, whatever. So we'll just skip over that. I have to get out of the habit of talking about how much I did not enjoy the big one. I know everybody who went, or a lot of people who went, had a good time. I didn't enjoy doing a big one.
I'm sure it had nothing to do with the venue. For those of you who don't know, the venue is one of the craziest pieces of architecture because it's a coliseum that is inside a big glass box.
Well,
and I don't know why they made both of those choices. It's round with box around. So you don't know it's round until you get in.
Yeah, it was okay. So I have a lot of feelings about that building specifically. And so first off, every major city in the U.S. has a project like this that they leveled Albina and
the historically black community.
Yes,
in Portland.
And not just historically black, but like historically integrated. There were a lot of immigrants and a lot of different kinds of people living in that community
and thriving.
And it was destroyed to build Interstate and Memorial Coliseum, and the Moda Center went over there too. So not a great backstory to begin with.
No.
And that, it's a big mid-century brick. And so it's honestly, from a distance, it's not that bad, especially sitting next to Moda Center. It's not that ugly. But when you go inside, you're absolutely right. Like it's 2 floors, right? So there's this big fish bowl in the center, which is where the Winterhawks are. Again, the Winterhawks, I'm not going to, I very easily could, but they took the Chicago Blackhawks logo, that awful racist. Up until very recently, they were using a really awful racist Native American caricature as their logo for no reason.
Oh, have they actually changed it?
They have.
Thank God.
I'm sure not fully, and I'm sure there's still people who are try to make some attempt at bullshit. It's offensive and it should go away permanently, and Chicago should be doing something about it as well.
Yeah.
But not a building with a lot of great history.
No.
And this big fishbowl, and then in the ground floor, I don't know if you've ever been in this is an incredibly specific podcast all of a sudden.
Yes.
If you've ever been in the basement of that building.
I have many times.
It's just wood panel boardrooms, and they're so hideous. It's like,
well, yeah, that to me always, like the 1970s version of the hotel from the Wes Anderson film. God, what is it called?
Oh, Grand Budapest
Hotel. Yeah, it's the 1970s version of that, where they've just stripped away all the character, except it was always built that way.
It's like the outside of the building is actually kind of it's charming in that sort of mid-century, modernist sort of stripped back kind of way. Until
I like
get
the little
inside.
Fountains that are kind of set down. That's nice.
Sure. Yeah, there's definitely some things about it. I don't hate it entirely.
Yeah.
But I hate it like 90%, I think. And yeah, it doesn't have a lot of redeeming characteristics that that they built it in a place where they shouldn't have been building anything. And that racist logo is plastered all over the walls in there. And anyway, you do not want me to do my full, my tight 15 on VMC.
This is now officially a Rose Quarter Slam podcast.
Absolute nightmare. Yeah, do you want to talk about the freeway expansion and my feelings about that? Too? No, we're not going to get into it.
Well, we'll see if that ever actually happens.
It's unbelievable.
Our state's inability to ever pay for any transportation projects.
Maybe not that one. Maybe stop doing that one. Maybe go.
We need to have more commercial real estate, though. We must have more commercial real estate.
Well, I mean, there's something wrong with the commercial real estate we already have because it's not being leased to anyone.
No.
So maybe we're just not building it right. Maybe.
No, okay. I think we need more of it. I think the problem is we don't have enough of it.
Yeah, we could definitely take a tangent.
And also, it could be more expensive. Like, what if we just charge San Francisco rent? Maybe that could be the problem. Is people aren't valuing it enough.
Could be. So anyway. So we did the big one this is the thing we say XOXO so much we could just call it XO, and then we had to say Veterans Memorial Coliseum so much that year that we just called it VMC. So we did the big one at VMC in 2018 that was big, and some people don't like big events, and it turns out I was one of them, and I only found that out at the time.
Honestly, I'm kind of one of them now too. That's a post-pandemic change for old Sean.
Yeah, like smaller things. So and then we did another one in 2019, and we're kind of getting ready to maybe announce that was probably it.
That had certainly been, I think, presaged quite a bit, but it is sad. I mean, it's officially the end of a big era.
Yeah, sort of. I haven't talked to anyone about this yet, really, other than friends and and Andy, obviously, as we've been kind of working through this. But it's complicated.
Yeah, it is complicated.
It's weird for it to go away and to not feel like it's ending on our terms. The pandemic took it away from us. We wanted to do more, and it was the pandemic that was more or less responsible for us not being able to do it anymore. And so that's not very pleasant.
No.
And I mean, it's certainly on the long list of things that the pandemic took away from us. It's, pretty close to the bottom. It's, the much more important things have been lost, over the last few years. But yeah, it's still,
but
it was sad.
It was a rough time for events. Like I really, especially like 6 months into it, I really was in a deep depression for sure. But I was also thinking when we at PSU GD do a lot of big live events, we did student portfolio showcases and, lectures and things like that. And I was really of the mindset that will never come back. That's just done.
I remember that. Yeah. I remember feeling for a long time like I can't imagine a time when we would be doing this again.
Like to think in like summer of 2020, I'm going to sit in a theater with a bunch of people.
Well,
again.
a thing I think about.
What?
I don't know how much I want to get down this rabbit hole either, honestly. But the thing I think about a lot is I had a friend who had a particular obsession with. We're never going to do birthday cake candles again.
Oh, yes. This was.
Can you imagine spitting on a cake and handing it to someone like we used to do?
It is weird.
And then it's funny. Like I've been in scenarios in the last, year or so where there are candles on a cake and someone blows them out. I'm like, I thought we were going to do this anymore. What happened to that?
No.
This is gross.
We're back.
Yeah, so we're just back, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think we were lacking the nutrients that you only get from someone else's spit. So
this is it. Yeah. Where's the New York Times think piece about that? That's what I want to hear. Turns out we're all missing sharing, not just each other's DNA, but specifically spit on birthday cakes.
Specifically spit from birthday cakes. It's like a valuable part of your balanced breakfast.
I do like that in this imagined scenario, you're having birthday cake for breakfast.
I always do. Do you not? Is that unusual? I have the full balanced breakfast, of course. I have the orange juice. I have the 17 different food items that they always have laid out in addition to the cereal.
I'll tell you, I said earlier, I get to pretend to be British. I get to pretend to be Irish. I get to pretend to be American. I think the term for this is a continental breakfast. Right?
Well, it's hard to disassociate in my mind the idea of continental breakfast not being served in a terrible warming tray.
In a holiday,
somehow everything that you want is gone, and so all is just like
You never get a continental breakfast in a nice hotel.
No. They want you to have a real breakfast there.
Why is there so much water in the scrambled eggs? What? Couldn't someone have toweled them off?
You don't want to know what they're like without it.
Yeah, that's good. God, I never thought of that.
Truly grim and grisly, the continental breakfast.
Well, there's other people who are listening to this right now who are screaming the Key and Peele bit. Have you ever seen the Key and Peele bit?
No, what is this?
I'm going to butcher remembering this, but
please.
There's a famous skit from Key and Peele where they go to a hotel and there's like, oh, the continental breakfast. Ooh, he's spoiling us. Ooh, and the whole playing up how like fancy it is when it's really actually kind of disgusting. I'll never see a continental breakfast advertised somewhere again without thinking about that Key and Peele sketch.
I'm gonna have to go back and watch that. It's been a little bit since I revisited Key and Peele. I think You Should Leave took over my sketch comedy brain.
It's too weird. It's too weird.
You can't handle Tim's weirdness.
I have a friend who loves that show. And I get, I see the TikTok theme. The 55 burger 55 thing.
Oh yeah.
And so I get some of the jokes, like the stuff that sort of transcended the show. I get some of that. And I have a friend who loves it, this happened just recently too, a couple of weeks back, was like, you gotta watch this, you're gonna love this. And I watched the first episode and I was like, I absolutely just cannot get with this at all. This is just not for me.
I'll tell you what's very weird about it it's the only show I've ever seen that actually works this way, where the first time you watch it, you will be like, huh, okay, that's fine. Or, like that, where you're not into it at all. And that, I think, happens to plenty of people too. But it's when you watch it like the fifth time that it starts to.
And that seems to be, I
don't know why that is.
This is, a thing that other people may be familiar with is like, someone pitching you a TV show and they're like, okay, the first 4 seasons are unwatchable garbage. But you got to get through them to understand the fifth season's really good.
Wait till Riker grows the beard and then another season after that.
Right. And so, like, you gotta, in order for this to make sense, you gotta make a big commitment to a thing that probably isn't going to be very pleasant. Like, you gotta watch these seasons that aren't very good. And I feel like I got the same pitch with that show where they're like, it's not that, it's you have to watch it repeatedly until it kind of snaps something in your mind, and then you start thinking it's really funny. And I'm like, you know what? No.
You don't want to drive yourself to madness?
No, I don't. I'm fine. I'm just going to rewatch Taskmaster over and over again until the end of time.
Well, yeah,
and find that very charming. Lately. That's all. I'm good.
Friends, if you don't know Taskmaster, it's a British show where there's a mean gentleman, and he makes celebrities do weird tasks.
Well, yeah, and the premise of the show, he's the host, but he's and he is the taskmaster who is asking comedians, largely, some actors and miscellaneous British celebrity types, to do like sort of oddball tasks that mostly take place at this house that they have next to a golf course in London. Very strange.
Yeah, how did they get that house? Like, I want that house.
There's a very interesting story behind how they managed to, presumably, they must own it at this point.
They must own it, because they do some damage to it repeatedly.
Anyway, we'll maybe skip past a lot of incredibly specific references to the show and mention that, another thing that's very impressive about it is that the showrunner and the co-host of the show, Alex Horn, appears to have come up with some licensing deal or whatever, where you can watch it on YouTube for free.
Yes.
A lot of it. Not all of it, but a ton of it. So it's actually very accessible. Like, you can find it online easily enough. So, yeah, just skip listening to this part. Just go dig it up on YouTube. The 7th season with James Acaster in is my favorite.
Oh, that one's really good.
Go watch that. If you need something to get into, go watch that one first.
I'm really liking the current season that is going up now, too. Although I think it's like a season behind what is actually airing on Channel 4.
Yeah, I don't know anything about this, and I can't speak to this with authority. I'm just making this up, but you should try piracy. And so, not me, but a friend of mine has a setup where they download it illegally, and I don't know anything about that.
No, how could you?
It's pretty easy to keep up with. This person has informed me if you just steal it off of the internet. So.
The internet, a place for theft? I can't imagine.
What's up next?
So I guess maybe a good point to go from there. You're doing XOXO, And you come up with the idea for Suckerpunch. Do you want to talk about Suckerpunch? Like, what is the impetus behind Suckerpunch?
I mean, the story that I tell, I've been talking to investors. I certainly haven't raised a lot of money, but I've been raising money for this, and I've had to pitch this to people in a slightly different way than I've ever had to explain other things that I've done, like the festival. We never raised money for that or anything, and so I have to tell this romanticized origin story when I'm talking to people, and I think this is actually still true. That back in so the festival started in 2012. First couple of years it was fine. But around 2014, when we, very publicly had and were enforcing a code of conduct, when we introduced our lottery system, so we were able to have a more diverse group of people show up every year. We're able to prioritize people from marginalized backgrounds, all of this stuff. We made it very family friendly and all ages friendly. Started doing programming for kids too. The families showed up. We built an arcade for kids every year, stuff like that. The story that I tell is that, once we kind of got a lot of the obvious things out of the way, there were more specific ways that we could accommodate this, very pleasantly diverse group of people who were showing up every year. And one of them was in 2014, 2015, we had some people ask for better non-alcoholic options at the bar. And so originally, and actually all the way through the 2019, it wasn't ever really anything super complicated.
Yeah.
We worked with a local commissary kitchen. It's a place in Portland that if you go to a bar and you get an alcoholic cocktail on tap, you probably get it from the same place. That's what they do, is that they batch cocktails and keg them and sell them to bars.
Yeah.
And so I reached out to them and could you do this for us, but no booze, obviously. And so we did for years, and we made sodas and shrubs and kegged them, and they were on tap at the festival. And again, they were really good, but it wasn't craft cocktail level. It was pre-batched sodas, essentially. But I worked on it every year, and we, came up with interesting flavors. And then we let the community name them. The first year that we named the cocktails, it was a series of 3 emojis in a row, no words. And so when you went up to the bar to order them, you were like, okay, I'll have bee, leaves, devil face. What? We did it on purpose to kind of mess with people, and we had a lot of fun with it. And very quickly, and the first year that we did that was 2015. I loved it. It became my favorite part of the festival to work on every year. Was this little tiny project within this much bigger thing of coming up with the drinks, coming up with the flavors, naming them, putting this little bar together, even though it wasn't a huge production or anything. And so the origin story of it kind of spins out from there. That again, the same thing, this New York Times phenomenon of these articles start appearing all of a sudden about there's this burgeoning zero proof movement, and now we're starting to get more considered options for people who don't drink or they want to drink less, and it was being sort of referred to as zero proof.
Yes, and this is not a New York Times article about Portland. This is about things happening.
The New York Times were writing a lot of articles about how this is coming up, and yes, a lot of this is happening. It was very offensive to me personally. A lot of this is happening on the East Coast, and so I find that not offensive, but I find that funny. Because some friends of mine opened a bar in Greenpoint in Brooklyn called Getaway, and so much of the stuff on their menu was made it's Somm and who make drinking vinegars and spun out of Pok Pok that's made here in Portland, or the kombucha they were serving was all from the Pacific Northwest. All this stuff. I'm all these bars are opening or these bottle shops and bars and stuff are opening on the East Coast, selling stuff that we're making out here. Where's this movement should be being driven from? Not just the West Coast, but the Pacific Northwest, all the people who are doing the best work in zero-proof spirits and, thoughtful, non-alcoholic alternatives, it's all being made here. And so some combination of getting to kind of cosplay being a bar owner at the festival and putting this, quote, a very heavy quotes here, bar program together every year where we made sodas, half a dozen sodas every year. And then seeing, places like Getaway open up and a lot of, products coming to the market, especially the spirit alternatives. And especially once we kind of got past the first batch of just oh, this is just a viscous liquid in a bottle that doesn't taste like anything. Once we started getting, really interesting, complex, spirit alternatives that weren't contextualized by liquor. Like, oh, this doesn't taste like non-alcoholic whiskey. This doesn't taste like non-alcoholic rum. It tastes like something else. Like, what is this? It started to become very appealing to me to, like, what would it look like to build, not just open a bar out here, which I think should definitely happen, but what if we started thinking about these drinks in a different way? What if we were making craft cocktails that weren't couched in liquor, that were not described, like, we never put drinks on the menu and said, like, this is this, Island Boy. Again, another I'm a Bim Bam reference, deep cut. Here's the Island Boy, probably the most popular drink we ever had on our menu. We wouldn't hand that to someone and say, it tastes like a old fashioned. This tastes like a penicillin. No, it was unique and original and different. And it was, we didn't couch anything in liquor, and we weren't using anything in the drinks to try to parody alcohol in any way. Like, is it possible not just to open a zero-proof bar, but to run a bar program where the drinks are deeply unfamiliar?
Yeah.
Like novel and exciting and interesting, and if you've never had a non-alcoholic, like, I still remember the first pop-up we did at the beginning of 2020 before the pandemic showed up and we had to stop for a long time.
I don't know what you mean.
Yeah. A friend came the first night and he'd never had alcohol before. And he had the first drink and he came up to me and grabbed me by the shirt and was like, what is this? Like, I've never had anything like this before. This doesn't taste like anything I've ever had. I'm like, wow, this is what I'm chasing.
Yeah.
Like, I want people, most people's experience with non-alcoholic cocktails or mocktails, a word I really do not like, is it's fruit juice combinations with maybe some interesting ice. Like, oh, you could put a big ice cube in there, some pebbled ice or something.
Yeah, somebody putting bitters in a 7-Up or something.
Right, which, I will go to bat for Shirley Temple. I love a Shirley Temple.
Absolutely.
However, most...
Give me all the grenadine.
Yes, I love grenadine. And then the sort of more mature adult grenadines, now we're getting these Aperol Sprit, we're getting grenadine, but it tastes like someone set it on fire. So there are, we're starting to get some of those now. Wilderton make it really great. They're out in Hood River, or Wilfred's is also really good. There's a few of those. Anyway, that experience with that friend trying that drink and I can't compare this to anything I've ever had before. This is kind of blowing me away. And that was the experience that whole weekend of that first pop-up. And also people coming into the bar when we were able to reopen our pop-up last year. We did a 6-month pop-up in the Goat Blocks at a former CrossFit gym where we built out this gorgeous bar, this horseshoe mahogany bar, all custom built, and filled the place with plants. And it was this big glass box. And
with kind of a view of the city, perched on top of this building.
It would have benefited from being one story higher.
Yeah.
Because where we were was right at where they process all of the trash for Market of Choice. And so I'd like to be a little bit further away from that. And the patio, it was fine if you were inside, but then we opened a patio towards the end of the summer last year, and it was pungent.
Ooh.
Yeah,
summer's going to do that.
Yeah. So being a little bit higher up and being able to see Big Pink on the West Hills and whatever, that it was, it was an absolutely gorgeous space. But that was the goal, was can we create non-alcoholic cocktails that have just as much care and consideration and thought put into them as craft cocktails, but let's not couch them in liquor. We're not trying to parody anything here. We're trying to come up with something novel and unique. And yeah, and I want more people grabbing me by the lapels and shaking me and what is this? What have you done? I've never had anything like this before. This is breaking my brain. Yeah. This isn't fruit juice in a Collins glass with pebbled ice. This is something else. And yeah. So that's what we did, and we were very successful doing it. We were planning on keeping going. We had to cancel the first public seatings because it would have been March 19th and 20th. Yeah, terrible timing. And then we were able to reopen in February of 2022. And we were open for 6 months at the Goat Blocks.
And that's an experiment that's sort of ended now. You're not in the Goat Blocks anymore.
Yeah. We wrapped up at the end of August. Yeah, and we did a lot while we were there. We flipped our menu multiple times, put a lot of new drinks on the menu. Had some really incredible staff come through the bar who submitted drinks to that menu, who totally got that thing I was just waffling on about like, this has to be different. This has to be novel. This has to be exciting. This has to, like, this is a grab. You buy the lapels and what the hell is this that we're going for? And I don't want to just give people fruit juice. You put a little bottle shop in the front and introduce people to a lot of other options, spirit alternatives. And, there's some really great non-alcoholic beer. We're about to transition into talking about that. Some really great non-alcoholic beer now finally in the U.S. And, it was really great to be able to do that. And then, the next thing we're going to talk about is what happened after that, which is, yes, unfortunately, we closed. And another project that we were running sort of simultaneously, which
a little behind the scenes almost.
A little behind the scenes. And honestly, so the origin story, what we're now going to talk about is that we've been making non-alcoholic beer for a little while now. And the original plan for this way back in the beginning was we had made a beer with Gigantic for the festival in 2015, a fresh hop IPA, a regular beer with alcohol in it. That was a huge success. And I really enjoyed the process of doing that too. And so when we were opening the bar, I was like, well, we could make we're in Portland, like someone will want to work with us on making a non-alcoholic beer. We'll just, we're not going to make a ton of it.
Yeah, there's a couple breweries out here.
There's a couple. And so I'm going to reach out to a handful of people that I know in the industry. Could we come up with something non-alcoholic that's a Suckerpunch beer, essentially, that we would just have at the pop-up for 6 months, no more than that.
Yeah.
And so turns out that the people in the world who are both most capable of making non-alcoholic beer also find it the most offensive that it exists. People who own breweries, and not to paint with a broad brush, but generally speaking, a lot of people who make alcoholic beer are not interested in making non-alcoholic beer. They find it vehemently offensive to their craft or whatever. And so
you're sort of offering some vegan burgers to a slaughterhouse.
Sure. I'm like, okay, get over it.
Yeah.
Fine, have your opinions. That's fine. And so they did. Some people had their opinions, and it didn't look like it was actually going to be possible to make something in collaboration with a brewery. And just by complete coincidence, just as so many incredible opportunities that have fallen into my lap have similar origin stories, that I was having lunch with a friend and complaining about this and saying, all of these fucking beer bros don't even want to take a phone call. I can't even go and meet them. Like, I'm emailing and they're like, no, we're not interested. Don't contact us.
Yeah.
Like, okay. And I was complaining to someone who was like, what I need is, I need someone who has been doing this for a long time and maybe decided during the pandemic, at the beginning of the pandemic, that maybe they wanted to get sober. They've been sort of reconsidering,
Yeah.
As a lot of people, I make this sort of, towards an analogy time, I make this analogy to, a lot of designers who, when tech showed up and were like, hey, you don't have to struggle to get invoices back from clients. You don't have to struggle justifying your worth. Come and work for our startup. We're going to give you a ton of money and autonomy.
Oh, no.
Or get, the walk through the forest with Mark Zuckercorn, whatever that everybody did, when they went to Facebook, that people got pitched this idea of this industry and then went, and a few years in were like, oh, wait, it's toxic as hell and I got to get out of here. And then they realized, like, oh, wait, the only thing I know how to do is this. And I don't want to work for these companies. They're all morally bankrupt, or they're like destroying democracy or whatever. But what the hell do I do with myself? And I was explaining this to this friend who didn't have that context. I was a person who's more in the beer world than they are in this like tech design world. Like, what I need is someone who's kind of struggling with this in the same way, who's like, there's a lot about this world that I got sober. I don't want to be involved in this world anymore. I don't want to be in with the beer bros. I want to kind of do my own. I want to do something else, but also the only thing I know how to do is this.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh, that's really funny. Do you know this? Like, you're describing someone I know.
Oh.
I'm like, what? Okay. And so he ended up introducing me to this person, Justin Miller, who was formerly head brewer at Hopworks. He decided to stop drinking at the beginning of the pandemic, also quit working there to go hike the PCT. Very interesting.
Damn. All right.
Guy. And so I ended up getting together with him, and we got coffee a couple times. And I was like, do you want to start trying to figure out how to make non-alcoholic beer together? And so that's basically what happened. And he and I have been working together ever since. He did leave for a spell and go finish hiking on the PCT.
He was doing this in the middle of the hike? Kind of like taking time off, I imagine.
So he started, and then the pandemic hit, and the Park Service was like, hey, surprise, there's a pandemic, you got to come home, the trail's closed. And he got the permit, and so then he reapplied for the permit and got it, and so he left, I think that was last year, and went and did it and finished it. Obviously that was an incredible experience for him, and unfortunately I've got the body of Shrek. I'm like not going to hike the PCT anytime soon. I think I don't know if anyone else is listening who's playing the Tears of the Kingdom. I could do the PCT if I was like a Goron and you put me at the top of it and just let me roll down the hill. If someone just pushed me, I am in absolutely no physical condition to do anything like that. So I find that, deeply admirable that he went and did that.
I mean, you could use Ultra Hand and build yourself a glider or something.
Yeah, I'm getting on one of those eagles and just flying from,
Can you ride eagles in the new one?
One of the Zonai devices is shaped like a bird, which, I don't know if it's an eagle necessarily.
Oh, my God.
Anyway, so he and I got together and we started making beer together. And when the bar closed, and originally it was a much more ambitious project to try to open a bar, multiple bars, to build out the retail space and to do some more retail bottle shop stuff and maybe multiple locations for that too.
Yeah.
And could we get into developing our own products? A lesson that I still haven't learned for whatever reason is that I have a finite capacity and I can't run multiple businesses successfully at the same time without completely destroying myself.
Hey, I'm fairly familiar with that. I'm going to be honest. Yeah.
And so, we made a decision at the beginning of this year, we're recording this in 2023, right? To just focus on the brewery.
Yeah.
And so, that's what we're doing. We have an IPA and a lager. The IPA is totally finished. The lager, we're still R&Ding. We've got a little pilot brewery up in St. John's that again, very odd set of circumstances that we've conveniently kind of stumbled upon that we've been doing kind of R&D brewing at. And we're getting ready to scale up and start doing some serious volume to hopefully bring this to market in the next, few months. And it's been very interesting. And I didn't think I was ever going to end up owning a brewery or anything like that. And who knows what's going to happen with it? Maybe I won't end up owning a brewery, but Justin is such an incredible talent and wonderful person. It's been such a joy working with him on this. And, and so we're very excited to bring, it's called Heck.
Yes.
Yeah, and the line is, if it had alcohol in it, it'd be called Hell, but it's non-alcoholic. So it's called Heck. And so I love naming things. I named Suckerpunch too. I still think that's one of the best things I've ever come up with. It was like people would come in, they were like, how'd you come up with the name? And I'm like, are you kidding? Like, why are you here? It's non-alcoholic cocktails. You have to be a sucker to take this seriously, right? We're doing a tongue-in-cheek thing, right? Don't you get it? I still love that so much. So working on that now too.
We were talking before the recording, a lot of ways this is sort of an inflection point, or as I always seem to say, reflex point. I don't know why, because that's not correct.
Yeah.
But this project is sort of in this stage where it, is about to become a real thing. And there's a bunch of other things that are about to change in your life. And that's that's kind of an exciting place to be. And it's kind of a terrifying place to be. I've been spending a lot of time there myself.
We were talking about this beforehand. I think, at least for me, and, the thing that we were saying, before we hit the record button, that this sort of odd nostalgia that I have that, I share with some people, that we were all sort of having these dominant emotional experiences simultaneously at the beginning of the pandemic, the time dilation thing that happened at the beginning. Everyone was like, how is it the days feel so long? And also that it just felt like 20 minutes, and that I feel sort of oddly nostalgic for remember, obviously it was horrific. And what it was actually happening was they were all simultaneous, for the first time, really, a lot of people, almost everyone was experiencing the same trauma at the same time. That's what it was. This is not a thing to feel nostalgic about. It was horrific, but it was sort of novel and kind of interesting that we were experiencing big feelings and experiences like this sort of simultaneously.
Yeah.
And so there is sort of, and it is odd to kind of miss that. There was something kind of uniting in that, like, you know, especially at a very difficult time. And I think it's maybe not the same thing. I'm still looking for that in places, but I feel like, and again, I don't know if everyone agrees with this or even anyone agrees with this at all, but it felt like last summer, I think everyone was expecting a big change or a big sort of inflection point kind of moment, and it didn't really happen.
Everybody was just too
But it's
tired.
happening this year. But for some reason, and I know I'm not the only person experiencing this, like, you know, I made the decision to end EXO and, you know, permanently, and, you know, the bar closing and transitioning over to the brewery, and just like personal life changes.
Yeah.
I have to move. You know, I'm not leaving Portland, but like I'm going to be moving out of my apartment hopefully next month. You know, that thing that I think I was expecting to show up last summer is showing up this summer. I think a lot of people are feeling like this is sort of a big kind of inflection point. This is a moment for change, embracing that, maybe it's time for things to be a little bit different. I'm definitely going through that at the moment.
Yeah. It's also a moment of excitement, too, because, like, when I think back to 2020, a lot of the change was terrifying.
Yes. I am allowing myself to feel enthusiastic about this.
Yeah.
Because when the fuck have I felt enthusiastic in the last 3 years?
Yeah.
Like, you know, I'm getting a little taste of optimism and the potential for the future, and the things that I'm working on now or starting. You know, what if this is what I do for the next few years? Like, that's actually kind of exciting. Like, embrace it. Like, when was the last time I was excited about something? Like, I'm not going to hold back. Like, let's feel excited. If you have something going on in your life that makes you feel excited and optimistic, you know, it's also a time of great pessimism, and it's, you know, it's very much in vogue to be pessimistic about everything. Fuck that. Be enthusiastic. Yeah, we've earned it.
I think that is such a good mentality to kind of leave folks with. Like, that's where we should be, like, really thinking about, like, you know, feeding some of the things that have been holding us back to that void fish.
Yeah.
And like looking at this as a chance to, like, make some change that is positive for ourselves.
Absolutely. And who knows what's going to happen, and it's still a very weird and scary time to be a person, especially if you live in the US. But God, if you can grab onto anything that feels good and feels like you've got some potential for the future.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I feel like I'm surprisingly coherent this morning. And I want, if anyone is taking away from this that I, like, have anything figured out, or, like, I absolutely do not. I am, you know, adrift here also. But I mean... like I am grabbing onto these feelings and sort of hoping for the best. And that's what's coming up next. Am I going to do something to succeed? EXO, you know, the brewery's at this really great point that it could potentially take off. I'm just going to grab on and work as hard as I can and see if I can turn these things into something. And feels like that sort of inflection point or reflection point, perhaps. Finally showed up this summer.
Andy, if people want to find more about Heck or about you, where do they go? Where do they look?
So we're going to do some, now that we actually have beer, and we're recording this on a Sunday. So on Tuesday, we're going up to the brewery to start canning some of the beer that we have.
Ooh.
So we're going to start doing events to, like, test it with people, see what people think. And it's great. You know, I care what you think, but I also know it's really good. So you can go to heck.beer, and especially if you live in Portland, heck.beer. Yes, I love nice, tidy domain names.
Oh my God, I didn't even know that one existed.
Heck.beer, I think we have heck.brewing too, actually. Although if we don't register that until I check. If you're listening, don't you dare.
Just pay ICANN the $10,000 to get the dot brewing TLD off the ground.
No, thanks. So heck.beer, I have, I don't know, what else is... AndyMcMillan.com is my site. You know, we're also recording this at a time, like, Twitter is dead. This, you know, turns out this lunatic took it over, and he's a real piece of work. And I have
it seems to be getting worse by the day, too.
Well, I'm glad we're not getting an opportunity to talk about that, honestly.
No.
But this, like, you know, I don't know how well this will age, but, you know, we're all sort of sitting around waiting to see where we're supposed to go next. and I don't feel particularly enthusiastic about any of the options that are available at the moment.
No.
So I don't know. Go to my website. It's pretend it's 1996 again. Just go to my website if you want.
I think that's fantastic. I will say I'm also reinvesting in LinkedIn because there's something deeply wrong.
God, why'd you bring this up at the very end? No kidding. No kidding. I decided, especially after the sale and Elmo buying Twitter, I feel very conscious of this like incredible resource that I built up over years, like this wonderful collection of people who were on Twitter, this going away, and like there's a warm, fuzzy like, oh, my friends and everything, but there's also kind of a brutal like, oh wait, this is where all my professional opportunities came from. This is terrifying. And it turns out there is a place where you collect people around professional opportunities, and it's a little gross, but it's LinkedIn. And I've been sharing this with a lot of people that I started trying to rebuild my network on LinkedIn a few months back. Of course, kind of like, gagging while I was doing it because I don't think anyone has warm, fuzzy feelings for LinkedIn.
No.
But what happened actually is a very un-LinkedIn thing is like, I'm getting coffee and lunch with people I haven't seen in like 5-6 years.
Wow.
It is, people are messaging me on LinkedIn to catch up, or I'm like reconnecting with people I haven't talked to in a long time. I'm not on there like, pitching things I'm working on or looking for jobs or, whatever you're supposed to use LinkedIn for, constantly talking about yourself, whatever you're supposed to use it for. Yeah, it's honestly actually been a really nice kind of, I have been getting the warm fuzzies from it. Like I've caught up with people that I haven't seen in years. And, is it the other thing too of like being friends with people? I forget where people work. I don't,
and a lot of folks changed since maybe the last time anybody used LinkedIn.
It's incredibly useful, actually. Yeah. Like and to be able to catch up on like what's been going on in people's professional lives, and that is so often how so many of us relate to each other. At least catch up with somebody you haven't seen in 5-6 years. What have you been up to? What are you working on? How's work? How's your job? What's your shitbag manager up to? And it has actually been a really incredible resource for reconnecting with people. And I think I'm using it wrong. Like I'm using it to be friends with people, like actual, real, genuine friendships.
You're
and
using
it's great.
It right.
Love LinkedIn. Go back on LinkedIn. We're all fucking up LinkedIn.
Yay!
And so, embrace it.
2023. That's our 2023 motto.
The year of LinkedIn.
The year of LinkedIn.
It's not Blue Sky or Threads or anything. If it's going to be some gross tech startup, I don't know about the ownership of LinkedIn, but
I believe it's Microsoft.
I assume
famously chill company. Microsoft.
Problematic people running it too, or whatever. But we're going to embrace something that's being run by people who have way too much money. Why not LinkedIn?
Yeah,
give LinkedIn a chance.
Make LinkedIn weird again.
There you go.
Well, thank you so much, Andy.
Oh my gosh,
this was such a treat having you here.
Enjoyable. Yeah. Oh my God, I can't. If you made it through to the end of the episode. Like, I feel like you should be able to send a like stamped addressed envelope and you get a little reward in the mail or something. Yeah,
send a self-addressed stamped envelope to 2000 Southwest 5th Avenue, Portland, Oregon, 97201, care of Sean Schumacher, and I will send you another self-addressed stamped envelope to your address of choosing. We'll just sort of a bad system.
How do you adequately reward someone for sitting through 2 hours or whatever of this? You send them some stickers or?
Well, I tell them that I've been sitting through it for 8 hours, cutting it down. And then that guilts them sufficiently. Mm-hmm. But thank you again.
This was so much fun. Thank you for even thinking of me. And yeah, this was a blast.
Thank you. And also, hey, listener, thank you for listening to this. Again, send me that self-addressed stamp envelope. I will send you one back. And we'll just keep doing that forever. If you like this show, why not subscribe in your podcast player of choice? You can search for the words that are this show's title, Did I Do That, on those services. But you could also do that by visiting our website, dididothat.design. There you can find some good images that go along with each and every episode. And if you want those images delivered directly to you, you can follow the show on Instagram. We are also socializing on LinkedIn and YouTube if you want to embarrass yourself publicly by showing your support for us on LinkedIn, especially. Again, make LinkedIn weird is our 2023 goal. I'm Sean Schumacher. This is Did I Do That? And as we always say at the end of every episode...
What?
What? Okay, bye!
Bye! Did not know you were going to point at me.
Yes, that's the bit. Okay. Thank you. That was incredible.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
This is a nonsense show.
Yeah.
More than anything.
I mean, I think we're nailing that. I mean,
hooray!
Mm-hmm. What's up next?
Hey, are you looking for a podcast about fonts? Why would you be looking for that? That's weird. But if you are, for some reason, have we got the podcast for you?
It's called Fontroversy.
That's pretty good.
That's pretty good. It's like controversy, but font.
I got that.
It's pretty hard to get that one. I don't know about that.
You're right, it's a thinker. What do you do on Fontroversy?
We talk about fonts that we might not love.
And you kind of go behind the typefaces themselves and reveal fun and interesting facts?
We sure do. And maybe, if you listen to it, which you will, you might...
Is that a threat?
Yeah.
Wow.
You might change your mind about some fonts that you see every day.
I'm in. Where can I go to find this podcast?
Well, you can find it at fontroversy.com or wherever you find your podcast.